top 10 movies of 2023. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna be doing. This has been in the making forever, and unlike last time, I've actually rewatched all 10 films I'm gonna be discussing. So my top 10 favorite films of 2023. All of these movies are great with some fantastic standouts. Overall, I think this was a pretty good year for movies. Nothing too outstanding, but a lot of fantastic stuff. I've covered all my honorable mentions last week in this video, so if you're curious on any other movies I forgot to mention, it will be in the description. I also, of course, haven't seen every movie of the year. I may have missed out on some things. Because of that, this list might change in the future, so I will have an updated comment on my full ranking of the year, as well as updates in case I add movies to this list. Anyways, enough stalling. Let's just get into my favorite movies of 2023.
Good for them! Good for them!
I feel like most movies on here have a deep message or something grander they're trying to say, but that doesn't apply to... Can I say that? That doesn't apply to Bottoms. There are a lot of bizarre, absurd films that have come out this year, and Bottoms is definitely one of the standouts in this style of filmmaking. Basically, everything with the football players perfectly captures this. It's so entertaining and so much fun, you really just never want to pause it. The acting is also fantastic from the two leads, and Hazel, yeah, she's pretty good too. Jokes like the gay guy wanting to blow up the entire school and the random football player in the cage, like, what did he do? Jokes like these are great, and a lot of comedy just comes from how bizarre the film is. It's so chaotic and full of energy. It's honestly just super bad done right, with way more likable characters while still keeping the stupid over-the-top style from the McLovin subplot, and then just making that the entire film. Also, they all get a mostly happy ending, which is nice. I guess if anything, the comedy sometimes falls flat, mostly all the stuff in the trailers, which was the main reason I didn't want to watch it when I originally saw them.
I kinda just wanted to make this instead of reviewing Bottoms or whatever is popular right now.
The reason why people love it so much is because it's just so much fun from start to finish. The final fight is great too, with the extreme violence coming out of nowhere being so funny. I just love this bizarre, over-the-top depiction of real life and these two great characters doing literally whatever for 2 hours straight. This is definitely one of the most underrated films of the year, and I think more people should definitely be talking about it. How to Blow Up a Pipeline is a genius, incredibly well done film on climate change and the steps some people take to make corporations actually notice what's going on. Every character is fantastic, and the dialogue in this film is very easily some of the best of the entire year. My favorite character is probably Michael. He's a really cool character, and it's pretty funny that no one on the team actually likes him, and it's really funny how annoyed he gets at everyone throughout the film. I guess my only issue is that it feels very indie, and it's shown by some of the small characters having really messy, rushed acting, which takes a bit away from the movie. I think every lead and all the main characters are all acted very well though. The writing is excellent, all the dialogue feels very natural and fits every character extremely well. The scene where they all talk about how they're basically terrorists is incredible. It really reflects on every character's personality, with Alicia being the one to comment on how they're actually harming people by blowing up the pipeline, since she's one of the only characters who is the least motivated to actually blow up the pipeline, is only there really for Theo. That's extremely subtle, since we don't even know that much about what these characters' deals are at this point in the movie. I like the Texan American guy that threatens to shoot the health department. He's pretty cool. I think Logan is really annoying, but that's the point, and he's basically Machine Gun Kelly, which is kind of funny to think about. Come on, they had to be inspired by him. Just look at them, they're the same person. The movie is definitely more about how everyone came together to actually blow up the pipeline instead of, the actual part where they blow it up. And even though there's like 7 or 8 different characters, they all manage to be really creative and completely different. They're all unique and special for each of their backstories. The actual plan they had to blow up the pipeline is really good too. There's a lot of twists and turns I won't spoil, but Rowan has something to do with it, and while Michael is my favorite character, she definitely has the best story, with the final twist of it all being fantastic. After all this build-up, when they finally do what the name of the film says, we get this excellent ending, which is one of my favorite scenes of the entire year, which is showing where every character ended up by the end during the credits. Seeing characters like Michael just going back to his boring job and talking to his mom after doing one of the biggest events in his entire life and one of the biggest moments in global warming protests is fantastic. I also love seeing Sean doing the same thing he did at the start of the movie by vandalizing property and putting notes on why he did it. And there's also some tragedy at the end with some of the characters, which I really love. The main theme of the movie is definitely the chain of change in society. The entire goal to blow up the pipeline was for other people to find out about it and decide to also make change. And that's perfectly shown at the end, where a group of people vandalize a boat to protest for climate change, which is how the movie ends. It's fantastic. And it's a great commentary on how the film goes and the rate it changed, and I love it. So yeah, great film that everyone should totally watch. I loved it.
I'll have the medieval meal.
It's still shocking that this film made the list, but here we are. This is such a shockingly grounded film for the complete mess that the MCU is now. It just tells a super well done story on the Guardians. It's not an MCU film, it's actually a Guardians of the Galaxy film. These movies are barely connected to the MCU as a whole, and that's why they're so fantastic. I mean, this one is kind of important to Endgame, but other than that, they explain it all in the movie. You can actually watch this movie only knowing what happens in the first 2 two Guardians, not the rest of the entire MCU, which is great. Everyone's got something going on in this movie. We get stuff like Drax learning that he was a father and needs to raise a generation, Nebula realizing to accept others, Mantis' journey to become her own person, not a group, Rocket coming to terms with the trauma he endured as a child, Peter seeing his family again, even the Russian dog and Kraglin get an arc with that incredible scene of Kraglin seeing Yondu telling him to use the arrow. Everyone here gets a character arc to end off their characters for the series. I think the movie doesn't have a lot of focus on Rocket with the Guardians, and much of it is just on his backstory, which, don't get me wrong, is fantastic, but I still wish we saw some more of his reactions with the Guardians. My favorite part of Guardians 2 was Rocket's relationship with the Guardians of the Galaxy and him putting up a mean personality so they don't confront him on his insecurities and trauma. In this movie, they completely ditched that, which bothers me a lot. Also, mild spoilers, but the fake outs in this movie are kind of a big problem. Drax kind of has a mild fake out death, but it's not one you would really see as like being an actual possible death if you weren't surrounded in the mix-ups and discussion about who would die in Guardians 3. So for me and other people probably, you would probably think Drax is gonna die in that scene, but he doesn't, and that's fine. It's a fine death out. Rocket's fake out death is pretty good, but seriously, if Rocket had died there, it would have been a fantastic way to end out his character. Then again, it didn't really fit with the story the movie was trying to tell, so whatever. Peter's fake out death is not very good. There's literally no reason for it, and you know he's gonna have survived, so yeah. A lot of people talk about how Rocket's backstory is the highlight, and yeah, it's fantastic. It's such a shockingly dark and brutal side story for something in the MCU. You know, it actually earns that PG-13 rating because it's horrific. So though I think the ending is probably better than all that. It wraps up everyone's character perfectly, and if this is truly the last time we'll see Mantis, Drax, Nebula, and Rocket, this is the perfect way to end it off. Also, the end credit scene playing Come and Get Your Love might not only be the best part of the entire trilogy, but may be the best moment in the entirety of the MCU. So despite the issues, it's still a great movie. Guardians 2 better though, don't at me.
Didn't you abuse your wife?
Besides another film coming up, this is definitely the second most underrated film of the entire year. When it came out, everyone agreed it was really good, and then we just moved on. But seriously, this one needs to be talked about more because it's easily the best Rocky/Creed film I've seen, and as of now, my favorite boxing movie ever. That's not saying a lot. I've seen like 5, but it still shocks me how good this is. Yeah, it's generic, but isn't that all sports movies? If you ignore this is just an incredible story with a great bittersweet ending. Dame is the best antagonist I've seen in a sports movie. He's so threatening while also being completely understandable and relatable. I also love Michael B. Jordan's performance as Adonis. The relationship and dynamic is so good. They have such a good relationship, and as the movie goes on, it gets more and more toxic while Adonis tries to handle it respectively, and Dame is so petty and overrun with the past that he acts so much more irrational around it. It's also such a cool idea to have the antagonist go through his own kind of Rocky arc of becoming great throughout the movie and being as strong as the protagonist by the end. Just everything about Dame is great. I love the fight with Felix where their eyes narrow and Felix stares at him with anger while Dame just has a blank expression and looks at the belt. He doesn't care about the drama or the money involved with the fight. He just wants to win, and his fight shows it. It's brutal. Once he becomes the champion after, he soaks in that glory and fights back against Adonis because of his anger towards him for getting thrown in prison all those years ago. Oh yeah, and the fighting is excellent, just like everyone says. I can see the anime inspiration, and it's so fantastic to watch. There's just incredible editing and cinematography. The final fight is so amazing. The fact that it starts like a normal fight before having prison bars show up and having no audience cheer with them just fighting each other. This is because neither of them care about winning the medal. Dame kind of does, but he just wants to prove Adonis wrong mostly. But during the later rounds where their vision starts to get blurry, they start seeing each other as their younger selves because the root cause of all this is what happened to them in the past, and it's so well done. But once Adonis wins, he celebrates with his family before seeing Dame where his friends once were are all gone, and Adonis and Dame talk, and Dame tells him to celebrate, forget about him like he once did, and he leaves forever. And Adonis does this, and we never see Dame again for the rest of the film. And that's the end of his story. Someone who attempted to challenge a champion and failed, causing him to fade away until no one remembers him. It's genuinely incredible. I have no idea why people don't talk about this movie more because it's so well done. Also, Rocky's absence is something that doesn't bother me. He already had his ending in Creed 2. This is Adonis' story, not Rocky's. The other two Creed films were about Adonis, but Rocky was also a big part of it. This is a story between Dame and Adonis, and the movie makes that clear, and it's frankly beautiful. But I do miss Rocky a lot. It's great, and I can't recommend it enough.
There is little amusement to be had.
It's so strange that some people actually think this is one of the worst movies of the year. Like, how can you watch this insanely fun, creative, and bizarre movie and hate it? Does it make any sense? No, but it's so creative and visually amazing that I can't help but love it. This is honestly probably my favorite Wes Anderson film. It's so confusing and multi-layered and messy, but it just makes it so good. In my original review for this movie, I said that I didn't enjoy the black and white parts as much as the regular play stuff, and yeah, I still think the actual Asteroid City parts of the movie are obviously the best parts. The use of blue and orange colors for every scene makes it look absolutely beautiful from start to finish. The black and white outside the Asteroid City parts are still really good though. Some of the stuff it sets up, like the playwright's unstable mental state and general confusion around the story, is really cool. The idea of having this movie about an unstable playwright creating a story that expresses his pain and issues with the world, and then the movie switching between him writing the story and us seeing the actual story of Asteroid City that he wrote, and it slowly falling apart as the playwright wasn't able to finish it throughout the movie, is just brilliant. At the end of the story, we get one of the most unsatisfying endings I've ever seen in a film, but that's why it's so excellent. Literally nothing at the end gets resolved, and almost all the ending isn't even shown. It's just briefly explained during the black and white scenes. The scene where the actor for Augie says he still doesn't understand what the play means is incredible. That scene where he talks to the actress who was supposed to play his dead wife is one of the most interesting scenes of the year. Why would the screenwriter cut out the scene where Augie comes to the realization and ends his character? We'll never truly know why the guy wrote the story like this, and if he was writing about his life, or if it was a metaphor for his life, or if he was just unstable. Asteroid City is most likely a metaphor for grief and devastation, because the characters in this film are miserable, dry, and depressed. The movie is so depressing and also hilarious. Like, they made the kid who does all the dares so funny.
No.
And then in the next scene, extremely depressing and serious during the real estate vending machine scene. What is going on? Anyways, it's amazing. You'll probably hate it though.
Just now came back after watching Jawan movie, and this is simply, people are saying this is a blockbuster. This is not a blockbuster. This is utterly mama buster. This is Azan buster.
I've already done an entire review on Jawan, but I just wanted to state that despite every problem I find with this movie, it still just gets better and better the more I think about it. Jawan is so very easily the most underrated film of the entire year, and it's probably mostly because I've seen like one other Bollywood film, that being RRR, which is in fact one of my favorite movies ever made, and my favorite film of last year, so maybe that's why, because I'm not used to it. So I don't know, maybe the issue is just me. Maybe people don't like this movie because they're so used to Bollywood style, but I don't know. It has the best action of the entire year by a landslide. Yes, better than Spider-Verse. I can't understate some of these scenes. The opening where his bandages are slowly being burned off throughout the fight, the scene with the cracked masks, the scene where he destroys all the gangsters with a spinning crooked hammer with a crow in his introduction. How are you not watching this? It's one of the most creative, insanely entertaining films out there. The story is a mess. The acting is kind of all over the place. Dylan pointed out how funny the farmers killing themselves over losing their tractors were, and yes, it's quite goofy. But I could care less because he makes sparks off the metal on his shoe while driving a motorcycle, lights his cigarette off those sparks, gets off and explodes the motorcycle. I don't think you can get better than this. I haven't even talked about the color grading and cinematography because oh my god, they're both excellent. Like, the mask scene is so much better when there's a fire in the background with light blue backgrounds all over the place, and one of the coolest character introductions ever with his cracked white mask with the other use of colors everywhere. Dude, I don't know, I'm just kind of losing my mind. The story's messy but extremely interesting with so many callbacks throughout. If you miss this one character, they'll be sure to come back and become a crucial part of the plot later, and I love that. I love how chaotic the whole story is. It just adds to make it one of the most creative action movies I've ever seen. I seriously can't comprehend why so many people crave the John Wick Chapter 4 flamethrower scene when this movie has him make sparks off the metal on his boot to light off his cigarette and then blow up his motorcycle. The score is also fantastic. The Jawan theme is incredible. I love how much it twists and changes throughout, from a threatening villain song to being a musical to being a more heroic score by the end. I'm begging you, it's on Netflix right now. If there's anything you've learned from this video, just watch Jawan. It's actually incredible.
That's why I'm taking this to Ambrosius.
Who?
Ambrosius!
On my rewatch for Nimona, I honestly expected it to get a lot worse, since I think putting it this high was a bit too much, but honestly it just got even better after rewatching it. The world that Nimona takes place in is so incredible. A cyberpunk medieval setting is one of the coolest ideas of the year, and the movie takes full advantage of that, with electric medieval weapons being used and knights being the police, and so much more, while still keeping it up like it feels like it's in modern times and also in the future. There were some mixed thoughts on the animation, but I honestly got no problems with it. It's super stretchy and makes super great action scenes whenever Nimona transforms. This is just such a creative, visually impressive movie with so many great ideas. Why would Disney cancel it? Oh, anyways, regarding that, I love this movie so much. I feel it's not being talked about enough because it's just one of the best animated films of the year for the action alone. I know I said Jawan was better, and yeah, it still is, but Nimona's action is also fantastic. I really wish they had more action scenes. The first fight scene is so much fun with Nimona shape-shifting, leading to such creative ideas like the whale segment, the constant shape-shifting back and forth forth while being chased, and the non-stop back and forth between her and Balak. There's also that fantastic action scene where Nimona becomes a giant dragon that also works super well. Balak is such a great character too. I prefer Nimona, but he has so much going on here too. Obviously, the best part about this movie is the duo of Nimona and Balak. It's absolutely what makes the movie so good. They work basically perfectly off each other, and it's actually upsetting and depressing when they split up towards the end of the film. Nimona's a very clear trans metaphor, and there's an excellent conclusion to her story with her deciding to rewrite history, and it's so in character and the perfect way to end off her character arc at the end of the film. I also enjoy her backstory and how the movie never explains how she ended up as a shapeshifter. The backstory she tells is most likely fake, and the only real backstory we get is when she's still a shapeshifter, so the movie just never explains what Nimona's deal is, and that's great. I won't spoil the ending, but you know, it's still good. I'm not sure if people have issues with it. I haven't seen a lot of reviews for the movie, but I appreciate the upbeat ending while still keeping it sad throughout. It's such a great way to end off Balak's story and a good way to end the film. And the stuff with Nimona at the end is also pretty good. That's the part I'm kind of mixed on, but it's still good. I still like it. This is essentially a near perfect movie, but I have one issue. I think some of the jokes are really lame. It just feels like it's way too much kiddie to have these jokes, especially when the movie gets shockingly dark at points. It's so bizarre to keep all these jokes for babies when the film is focused on this dark material. It has blood and self-harm. Why are the annoying jokes here? You're getting the kind of the wrong crowd. But whatever, that's like 20% of the humor, because the other 80% is absolutely hilarious. It's so strange that the writers would write this unfunny garbage, then hit us with lines like,
I'm evil and I hate everybody! Not as much as I hate myself.
most of the movie is just shockingly really funny. Anyways, thanks a lot for ditching this fantastic movie, Disney, and causing it to have awful troubled production. We're so lucky to get something this incredible out of this complete disaster that Disney left behind. I'm sure you've heard a lot about Barbie, and I don't have a lot to add to the table, but whatever, it's Barbie. Barbie is just that movie that's so marvelous and shocking in every way. This is probably the best possible product you could get out of a movie centering around Barbie. The guts it takes to create an entire film produced by Mattel, and then the whole film is about criticizing the concept and idea of Barbie, and outright making fun of Mattel several times during the movie, is something I could never expect from a film like this. Just that one scene where it's all men in the CEO room is so interesting and so shocking for a film that's actually produced by Mattel. Also, I said it before in my review, but it is generally one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. I mentioned before in the bottom segment that a lot of movies this year try to go for that wacky, bizarre tone, and I'm a big fan of it, and I think Barbie is like the perfect example of how to do that. It's so chaotic and goofy, and it works so well. Seriously, you can't just get away with Sublime, The Godfather joke, Cellulite, and basically everything in I'm Just Ken. It's the perfect use of this style of film to make probably the funniest movie I've ever seen. Of course, to start off, the star of the show here is obviously Ryan Gosling. Give him his Oscar. He's fantastic in this. Ryan Gosling needs to have more comedic roles. He's incredible in serious roles, but people really underestimate his comedic potential because he kind of does everything perfectly in this movie. Margot Robbie is obviously the perfect cast for Barbie, but Ryan Gosling is also an incredible pick for Ken. Basically, whenever Ken's on screen, the movie's perfect. He's so funny. I can't get enough of him. I just remember seeing this in theaters, and when I realized he was going to be the antagonist of the film, I wanted to actually cheer because I just wanted to see more and more of him. He's also a perfect metaphor for kids or people who can fall down the alt-right sexist path, like, I don't know, Andrew Tate, which is great too. I've seen this film like 4 times now, so of course it's gotten less funny than when I first saw it, but each time I watch it, the ending of both Ken and Barbie's story starts to impact me more and more. Ken's arc in this movie isn't per se relatable, but his ending of accepting himself as his own person is just kind of beautiful to witness. I can't understand how a single person can see this movie as just woke garbage or saying it's only about hating on men, when it gives Ken this incredible arc of overcoming toxic masculinity to become his own person. The message of this movie is something I can't really talk about because, like, real quick, I think a lot of people's issues with this movie that aren't just sexist is the fact that the movie's feminist message is way too in your face and over exaggerated, and yeah, it is, but like, that's the point. For a movie that's so goofy and over the top all the time, why would the message be subtle? Wouldn't that not stick with the theme that the movie goes for? Also, it's Greta Gerwig. This is literally all her films except maybe not Little Women. I don't know, I haven't watched it, but yeah, the over exaggerated style of this film also perfectly fits the message the movie's trying to show. Since I can't comment, I'll just use what my mom said, which makes sense since she's seen a lot of hard feminist movies, but it's not the kind of stuff general audiences usually watch. But this is Barbie. This is a huge brand that made $1 billion, and it's kind of genius to have a movie that's so clearly all about feminism and show that to millions of people through the brand of Barbie. One issue, I guess, is that the monologue stuff is maybe a bit too far with the message, but it's still kind of what the movie's going for. Just yelling the message straight in your face. Regardless, the movie's very good. Ryan Gosling as Ken is basically perfect. It's incredible. Go watch it and stuff. May December is one of the most disturbing, disgusting, vile films I've ever seen. I watched it 3 days before finishing this video, and I kinda knew it was gonna be on the list, but I seriously didn't expect it to go this high. I went in almost fully blind for this movie, and that's probably how everyone should go into this film. It's absolutely not for everyone. The subject matter is extremely disturbing and graphic and horrifying. This film follows 3 characters: a bad, morally gray actress, Elizabeth, attempting to figure out what happened to a married couple so that when she plays one of them in an indie film on their relationship, she can fully feel like she's playing that character in true form. I think Elizabeth is a bad person. I'm not sure what the general consensus is on her character, but some of the stuff she does in this movie to preserve this horrifying event that took place between this relationship is extremely disturbing. This isn't the kind of story that should really be told. It's not the kind of story that should be switched around. Now we cover the married couple that the movie dissects. One of them is Gracie, who in my opinion, and probably everyone else's opinion, is pure evil. I won't spoil what she did in the movie, since again it's better to go in blind, but what she did is absolutely unforgivable. The movie dissects her character and shows how delusional and insane she is, thinking that she was fully in the right for all her actions. Then we get into the final character, who is the only truly good person in this movie, Joe. He's a victim of a heinous, evil human being who ruined his entire life. If there's one complaint I have with this movie, I think we spend too much time with Elizabeth and Gracie, who are both very bad people, and it feels like complete misery having to deal with this unsufferable and awful person trying to justify her actions. Throughout all that misery, there are sparks of humanity through moments with Joe. At the start of the movie, they never explain what Gracie did, and I honestly feel bad for her since society has treated her so bad. But in that diner scene where it's revealed what she actually did, she honestly just deserves everything that happened to her. I won't talk anymore about the story of Gracie and Elizabeth, since honestly you can just watch the movie for that. It's gross and absolutely revolting, but it has incredible writing and perfectly establishes these 2 bad people. The main focus of the movie and the best parts of the movie are Joe's story. Joe as a character is so secretly miserable, making a terrible mistake at a young age. Throughout the film, Joe is hit with the realization that his life was ruined after seeing his kids leave for college. The scene where he smokes with this kid and thinks about jumping off the roof is so horrific and tragic and realistic. Later on, when Elizabeth tells him the best line in the movie, telling him that that's what grown-ups do, he sinks so hard with the brief establishment we've had for his character. And that scene where he confronts Gracie is fantastic and terrible at the same time. The final scene of the movie where Joe from a sideline sees his kids graduating is just phenomenal and so sad. He's basically witnessing what he could have done with his life instead of staying with this actual monster his entire life just before the film ends. That part of the film is only like 30 minutes, but it's so powerful and tragic. There's no sugarcoating in this movie. It's just pure agony and pain for 2 hours straight. I don't even know if I can recommend this one because the subject matter is so hard to watch, but it is phenomenal. I mean, what did you expect? Across the Spider-Verse is just, that movie. I mean, I already did 2 whole videos on this movie, so I have already talked about this movie a lot, but it's probably the best sequel I've ever seen to any film ever. It continues the story perfectly, keeps all the characters perfectly the same while changing characters like Gwen's story and Miles' story to further advance their characters. I love that the first movie was Miles becoming Spider-Man, and this movie is about Miles figuring out what it truly means to be Spider-Man and what the idea of Spider-Man is. Gwen still might be the main character of this movie since she has the first 15 minutes of the movie to herself and it's all about her story. I have no problems with this being a part 1 because the ending of this movie is just the best scene of the year, no questions asked. It's one of the most awesome moments of the entire year. It's just the perfect molding of everyone's stories coming together. This is the best looking film ever made. It's not even close. The colors, the visuals, every character design is perfect. Look at Hobie, look at these worlds. This is the perfect multiverse movie. It perfectly expands from the first. It's fantastic in every way possible. Also, just to briefly cover my character ranking that got a lot of views, Hobie would be much higher because I realized how cool he was on like my 5th rewatch. I love this man so much, and I understand why everyone loves him so much. Is it as good as Into the Spider-Verse? No, but this is one of the best animated films of all time and the best sequel ever made, so like, who cares? It's fantastic, it's fantastic. It's across the goddamn Spider-Verse. Yeah, so that's my top 10 films of 2023. This is definitely the longest video I've made yet. I spent like 2 weeks on it, so please subscribe. This actually took forever to make. Anyways, maybe regular reviews coming soon. I was gonna do a Wonka review, but I'm not doing it now because this took the whole week to make. So yeah, thanks for watching, and this is an epic outro.